We all know Marilyn Monroe in some way or another. She's an actress, she's a model, or everyone's favorite, she's an icon. Marilyn was all of these things, and for many of us, we know her face very early in life, before we even know her name. I can't recall the first time I laid eyes on Marilyn Monroe. I don't remember the first image or the first video, because she's always sort of been there. If I saw a head of platinum blonde hair, it would remind me of Marilyn. Of course, I would learn later that Marilyn was inspired to bleach her hair because of another blonde bombshell, Jean Harlow. But when I was younger, it was Marilyn's hair. I knew her beauty mark, her expressions, her iconic dresses, but for years I didn't know jack shit about Marilyn Monroe. I had never seen a film, for instance, or an interview, or anything that showed me what kind of human she was. Because for a lot of people, Marilyn was not a person. She was and is an icon, in the most dehumanizing sense. We all know now that there's much, much more to Marilyn and her legacy than what you could glean from this picture or that one. But for years during her life and in the years since her death, Marilyn was most often celebrated as an image. Look at her beauty. Look at her body. It got me thinking about how much of my perception of Marilyn was informed by her icon status, by the exploitation of her life and her death, how Marilyn was invented as an image, and how people took that image long after her death and sold it to the world. The first and most obvious thing is that Marilyn Monroe was an invention, and a really fucking good one. Of course, I'm talking about the fact that Norma Jean Baker created Marilyn as a sort of alter ego, that she was almost always performing to a degree. That's true, according to many of Marilyn's friends and cohorts. Co-stars recall instances when Marilyn would talk about herself in the third person, stating that Marilyn would do something this way, or that Marilyn would never say that. Similarly, Sam Shaw could never forget Marilyn repeatedly speaking of herself in the third person. Referring to a scene in Itch or to a photo of herself, she said time and time again, she wouldn't do this. Marilyn would say that. She was good in this scene. Truman Capote wrote of finding Marilyn sitting for a long while before a dimly lit mirror. Asked what she was doing, Marilyn replied, looking at her. The invention I'm talking about, though, isn't just by Marilyn's hand, but also by the hands of mass media and of Hollywood executives that sold the myth of Marilyn. Celebrities come with personas. It's a guarantee of the industry. When you're an actor or a singer, you don't really have a product you're selling. What you're marketing to people and getting people to invest in is yourself and your talent. Just like advertising agencies spend billions of dollars figuring out the best way to promote their product, entertainers and the entertainment industry have people working around the clock whose only job is to make sure a celebrity maintains a certain image, their image. Almost every celebrity, especially actors, have something that they're known for. Outside of the films and TV shows they perform in or the signature styles they wear, they have a certain attitude or characteristic that becomes a trademark of their existence and of their place in the industry. They have something that they represent. Tom Hanks' image is wholesome and feel-good, especially if we pretend Chet doesn't exist. We see Tom Hanks and it conjures up images of the nice man next door who gives you advice and makes you hot cocoa when you need it. Yeah. Tom Hanks. The late and great Bernie Mac brings to mind things like, holy shit, I miss him so fucking much. Still, after all of these years, I fucking miss Bernie Mac. Fuck. And also things like his suavity and how he spoke his mind freely.
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
We think Marlon Brando and we're like, yeah, that was one horny motherfucker. It's a natural part of the industry for performers to be reduced to what they can symbolize. What they symbolize can change over the course of their career. Once upon a time, Julia Roberts was the plucky rom-com protagonist who was kind of quirky and easy to love. Then My Best Friend's Wedding came about and she played such an unlikable, traitorous person that she was able to shift the expectations surrounding her. Like all the people that came before her and the people that came after, Marilyn maintained a persona to sell to the world. This persona was a collaborative effort, though. It wasn't just Marilyn making decisions on who she was going to embody. It was Marilyn who chose her mother's maiden name, Monroe, but it was also studio executive Ben Lyon who suggested she change her name to Marilyn, named after Marilyn Miller, the famed Broadway star who died tragically young. A sad kind of harbinger when you think about it. It was Emmeline Snively, the head of the Blue Book modeling agency, who told Marilyn she needed to bleach her hair if she wanted to be famous, and it was Marilyn who suggested they go even blonder to be more like her idol Jean Harlow. Also a sad kind of harbinger when you think about it. And it was the infamous Howard Hughes who had been obsessing over platinum blonde starlets since casting 19-year-old Jean Harlow in his directorial debut Hell's Angels in 1930, who spotted Marilyn's newly blonde hair in a magazine. Hughes then requested Marilyn, then still Norma Jean, to be brought in for a screen test, which was later done by cinematographer Leon Shamroy, who basically foretold how Marilyn would be received in the public eye when he described her as, quote, sex on a piece of film. From that moment on, her image was decided. Sex pot, sex bomb, bombshell. Marilyn may have acted on the screen and off, but it was the media that took this persona and ran with it so far that it became impossible to escape. Marilyn may have known how to exude sensuality, but it was the media that reduced her to a sex symbol and nothing more. Marilyn's stardom didn't take off right away, but when it did, it was a wildfire. Marilyn was the name on everyone's tongues. She was sexy and self-assured and gorgeous. The fame quickly mutated into frenzy. At the time, there was no other actress put under a microscope at the level of Marilyn, whose private life became a spectacle for paparazzi and average Joes, ready to devour any detail they could get their hands on. It's hard to describe the frenzy surrounding Marilyn. It had been a long time since Hollywood had an honest and true sex symbol. When Marilyn came onto the scene, the idea of escapism was returning to Hollywood. World War II brought about disillusionment and depression, and people wanted to go to the movies to see things that took them away from that, from the darkness of war and the state of the world. So in 1930, the famous Hays Code, which censored everything you could imagine in films, was officially enforced, which left a lot of movies being very sanitized and faux innocent. In order to show any sort of sexuality, directors had to find creative ways of getting around the code, leading to scenes like this one. Though the code didn't officially end until 1968, by 1952 it was deemed unconstitutional, and Hollywood was like, thank fuck, make our movies horny again. And this was right around the time that Marilyn started to become a household name. So the reaction to her as a sex symbol wasn't just because she was super attractive, it was also because America was horny. They missed seeing sex and sex appeal in movies, and then came Marilyn, the savior of sexuality and soon to be symbol of sexual liberation. Marilyn became the highest paid actress in Hollywood, wildly popular in America and overseas. She made box office successes, she attracted crowds on the street, she was beloved and adored. But here's the thing about becoming a sex symbol to a culture that is sex-starved. They're only ever going to see you as that one thing, apparently, and the title of a sex symbol is not an easy one to have, especially when you're trying to deal with so many demons, inner demons, past demons, and the demons that dwell in a place like Hollywood. When the actress Clara Bow reflected on Marilyn's death in 1965, she said, "Being a sex symbol is a heavy load for one to carry, especially when one is tired, hurt, and bewildered." When I was younger, the first image that came to mind when I heard the name Marilyn Monroe was a picture of her in a white fur coat, a cloud of blonde hair on her head, and voluminous red lipstick. But at the age that I am now, after learning so much about her over the years, the first image that comes to my mind is one of Marilyn looking afraid. A crowd of spectators and paparazzi crowded around her, making it hard to move, pushing this way and that's the image that I see all the time now when I think of Marilyn. The publicity she received was beyond excessive and has become one of the earliest examples of intrusive scrutiny on young starlets. By the time of her death, poet Jean Cocteau famously said, "Marilyn Monroe's tragic death should serve as a terrible lesson to all those whose chief occupation consists of spying on and tormenting film stars." Some of these reporters even spied on her from helicopters hovering over her house. That is scandalous. The burden of stardom and celebrity has been well documented over the last few decades. In the early days of fame and acclaim, no one could really fathom that there was a downside to having millions of adoring fans and all the money you wanted. There's still a lot of that today, but now people are beginning to have a bit more of an empathetic view, recognizing that there's negatives to having so many eyes on you, to having your mistakes documented for the world to see, to having your private life on public display. Celebrities being so widely adored and so widely known also creates this perception in fans that they are closer to said celebrity than they really are. While this phenomenon of parasocial relationships happens to anyone in the public eye, nowadays it most frequently affects social media personalities like influencers and bloggers, because these people make their life a central part of their career. career, letting people into their homes and into their worlds through self-documenting. Vloggers speak to their audiences directly, and if people watch them long enough, watch them live their lives and refer to their audiences as their friends and or family, fans will believe that they actually are friends. This isn't completely the fault of the influencer though. You could be somewhat in the public eye and share little to nothing about your private life and still garner an audience that adores you and believes that they know you. This happens frequently with movie stars. Some movie stars use social media extensively, others distance themselves from it. But no matter how much they choose to disclose or conceal, someone somewhere will be watching, convinced that they know this person better than anyone else. Long before social media, Marilyn Monroe was frequently on the receiving end of this frenetic affection. She lived her life surrounded by people who didn't know her but who were still convinced that either through physical proximity or fanatic dedication, they knew her intimately. This heightened scrutiny led to the exacerbation of her insecurities she'd carried for years, worsened by the knowledge that she had so many eyes on her. Toward the end of her life, Marilyn became known for her erratic behavior on set. She showed up late, often missed her marks, didn't know her lines, and you could put this off on her being irresponsible. But really, it was fear and self-consciousness. Have you ever been afraid of getting something wrong or so nervous about messing up that your nervousness actually messes you up? That's what Marilyn experienced on set. And it didn't help that co-stars and directors regularly tarnished her. Reviewers claimed she had little to no talent. Critics could be harsh. Bosley Crowther, in his 1952 review of Don't Bother to Knock, went as far as to open his review with, "The story is that Marilyn Monroe is being groomed by 20th Century Fox for razzle-dazzle stardom on the assumption, we are told, that she is the hottest number to hit Hollywood in years. There may be some grounds for that assumption, but if they also expect her to act, they're going to have to give her a lot of lessons under an able and patient coach." Dawn Murray, Monroe's co-star in the film Bus Stop, said, "She was a very experienced film actress, but she could forget so many of the mechanical techniques. She would constantly miss her marks, so she would be out of focus or out of the light or in a shadow. I think it was a lack of confidence. For somebody who the camera loved, she was still terrified of going before the camera and broke out in a rash all over her body." I imagine knowing those things about how you're being perceived can put a damper on how well you can do those things. It's hard to do something well even if you know how to do it when your head is full of everyone telling you you're really awful at it. One of Marilyn's diary entries had this passage: "Why do I feel this torture? Or why is it that I feel less human than others? Always felt in a certain way that I am subhuman. Why, in other words, I am the worst. Why?" At the time of Marilyn's death, she was still a huge celebrity, but she was nowhere near the level of appreciation she is now. In fact, one of the most popular quotes about her death from director Joshua Logan is, "She was one of the most unappreciated people in the world." And then, just like Jimi Hendrix may or may not have said, it's unclear, "It's funny how most people love the dead. Once you're dead, you're made for life." Marilyn was an exceptionally well-paid actress, one of the highest-paid women working in Hollywood at the time. But the money she made when she was alive is no match for the money she's made since she died. Marilyn was and is an icon. That's why we get so many stories about her life, so many books and videos and essays and video essays, because the world wants to know more about her. And because of this notion of familiarity, all kinds of people who briefly touched shoulders with Marilyn have written books about it. "I was Marilyn's gardener and I knew her better than anyone. She absolutely hated overwatering. I saw Marilyn cross the street once. She's actually immortal and planned the fall of the Byzantine Empire. I walked Marilyn's dog, Mafia. He told me she liked her eggs sunny side up." I wrote that last one as a complete fucking joke, and then I found out there is actually a book written from the perspective of Mafia, Marilyn's dog. I mean, the Marilyn and me genre is a significant one in this field. To have once teased the woman's hair or hand-waxed her car was justification for running a few eager pages through the typewriter and seeing if anyone would bite. That the deeply personal revelation vouchsafed to the nearest stranger was her preferred mode of pleasantry eluded her confessors. Each thought that he or she had been specially selected as a kindred spirit. Each felt anointed as a person of particular understanding of the mysterious and private woman. There are Marilyn memoirs written by her cook, her masseuse, her call girl neighbor, the half-sister whom she met as a teenager, Lily St. Cyr's fifth husband who claims he brought the two women together in a three-way, Lee Strasberg's jealous daughter, several of the photographers who shot her, men who claim to be former lovers, former husbands. The list is endless. Initially, when I was working on this video, when I first proposed it, I think in January, it was all about the Marilyn Monroe biopics, but it mutated into how marketed Marilyn has become. I wanted to look at movies that attempted to show Marilyn in a more complex human way, and other movies that were more content with her being just an idea of sex, an idea of freedom, an idea of beauty. Then it dawned on me just how much of an idea Marilyn actually is and was. Her status as an icon is especially interesting when you consider that since her death, everyone knows that Marilyn was miserable with his sex symbol status, that she was depressed and that she was lonely. When she was alive, most of these things about her were kept hush-hush, so movie studios could keep using her to sell their movies, so she could still be this sex pot, ushering in thirsty audiences from all over the world. Since her death, we've come to know all the demons she was dealing with, and how miserable she was. And yet, still, we are sold Marilyn. The idea that we all want to be Marilyn, to be that sexy and self-assured, but it's a myth. Because think about it, nobody wants to be Marilyn. Nobody wants to feel hated by their peers, lonely, not taken seriously, angry, insecure. A lot of us struggle with these things already, and absolutely nobody wants it. Nobody wants to be Marilyn, but everybody wants to be the myth. And although we acknowledge the myth as a myth, we still sell it and we still buy into it, knowing it could never be achieved. In Marilyn's life, the Hollywood elite, her co-stars, her directors, her acquaintances, and the journalism surrounding her were not concerned with her being anything but a symbol. You put Marilyn in your movie so you could use sex to promote it. Sex sells! As Young as You Feel and Love Nest, movies Marilyn did before she became a household name, had her as the focal point for promoting material. On posters, Marilyn's picture was bigger than anyone's despite her not having top billing. This mode of suggestive promotion persisted all the way up until her death. The tactic has been used widely by major studios. Marilyn was no exception. It's similar to what Howard Hughes did to Jean Harlow for Hell's Angels. Harlow got top billing on the posters and promotion material, but was billed after her co-stars Lyon and Hall in the actual film. Jean Harlow was 19 years old when she got this role. And it's rumored that on the set of Hell's Angels, Howard Hughes cut Harlow's dress so that her cleavage would pop out more, cutting it and cutting it. Harlow was embarrassed and humiliated. In one scene that they shot in which Harlow wore a wrap, Hughes insisted that she open it wider and wider with every take. Before Marilyn, Jean Harlow was the hypersexualized, vixen-deemed starlet who was crushed under the weight of being a symbol. Hell's Angels being her big debut, Harlow was branded as a symbol of sexuality without her having any say in the matter. Her low-cut dress in that film became a staple of her wardrobe. She was made to wear dresses that were so low-cut and so tight that sometimes she couldn't even sit down. At one point, she was allegedly heard saying, "Must I always wear a low-cut dress to be important?" When Hell's Angels came out, Jean Harlow became a household name, but not for acting talent, for her body. Both Harlow and Monroe became emblems of eroticism. Their presence made men imagine what sex with them would be like, and told women they needed to aspire to be that. Their bodies were used to sell a dream of desirability and of eternal youth and beauty. They both died tragically young, and while Jean Harlow was never used for any sort of advertising posthumously, that wasn't really the way in the 1930s. Shortly after Marilyn's death, her face was used to sell the very dream she became known for. Some would say, the very dream that killed her. There was a joke in here about how I call JFK a dream. Like, that's my nickname for him, but I feel like it's inappropriate to say. Except I guess I just said it though. Marilyn Monroe was good friends and a huge admirer and collaborator of acting teacher Lee Strasberg. He was something of a father figure for her. They met when Marilyn was trying to get people to take her more seriously as an actress. She started studying with Strasberg and they formed a strong, life-lasting bond. So much so that Marilyn left 75% of her intellectual property rights to her mentor. After she died, Strasberg owned her likeness, and during the rest of his life, there was only one advertisement that made use of her image, in 1981 for Sony Beta. In 1982, Strasberg passed at 80 years old, leaving his own estate and his 75% stake of Marilyn's IP to his wife Anna. By the late 80s and well into now, Marilyn was everywhere in advertising. Nike, Levi Strauss, Holston Pills.
Like that Holston Pills, don't ya? My spine turns into custard. I get goose pimply all over.
Gap, Absolute Vodka, Snickers, Marilyn's Own t-shirts, posters, Marilyn Monroe memorabilia sells for thousands. Anna Strasberg hired CMG Worldwide to license any and all products related to Monroe. They did things with Coca-Cola, Mercedes-Benz, there were clothes and stationaries, the list goes on. But it wasn't enough to use Marilyn's image and the symbology
I'm sure the word you were looking for was symbolism.
of her existence to sell things. Marilyn's insecurities were also sold. Her life was sold. Her death was sold. Speaking of her death, when Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe got divorced, he sold his crypt plot, which was once situated right above hers. He sold it to a man whose final request was that he be buried face down so he could lay on top of Marilyn Monroe. In 1992, Hugh Hefner famously bought the crypt next to Marilyn, and he said it would be sweet to spend an eternity next to her. Even in death, people wouldn't and still won't stop hounding Marilyn. Jesus Christ. As for her personal belongings, in her will, Monroe stated that she wanted her personal effects and clothing to go to friends and colleagues, but in 1999, Anna Strasberg commissioned Christie's to auction off many of those items, including the gown she wore to President John F. Kennedy's birthday party. The gown went for more than $1 million, and the baby grand piano that Monroe cherished because it originally belonged to her mother was sold to Mariah Carey for more than $600,000. In 2001, Forbes started a list of the highest paid dead celebrities, and Marilyn Monroe has been on each list like 16 times. So almost every year. Her estate is making a fortune. Her personal belongings have been sold to complete strangers. In 2003, Patricia Bosworth wrote about Marilyn and her estate for Vanity Fair, and she opened her piece with a description of the scene where Marilyn's belongings were being auctioned off. The approximately 1,000 items sold included 20 pairs of Ferragamo stilettos, slightly sweat-stained at the heels, rainbow-colored Pucci shifts, Maximilian furs, lace bustiers, baby doll nighties, and furry mules. There was a gold Magnavox television, a set of gilt lighters from Frank Sinatra's Cal Neva Lodge, and the platinum and diamond wedding ring Joe DiMaggio gave Marilyn. The star's temporary driver's license went for $145,500, and an anonymous bidder paid $80,000 for the certificate Marilyn got when she converted to Judaism. All these things reflect Marilyn's vulnerability, Nancy Valentino said. Vulnerability was part of Marilyn's irresistible appeal. Some of the relics had a haunting quality. An open, compact, half full of crumbling pink face powder, a strand of blonde hair clinging to a hat. Then there were the poems Marilyn scribbled to herself. "I'm lucky to be alive," read one. "It's hard to figure out when everything I feel hurts." In her life, Marilyn was marketed by her beauty and her sex appeal. Then in her death, when the sadness of her life came into full view, her vulnerability was also sold. Her tragic life has been sold in books and biopics and video essays. I know Marilyn isn't like an exception or anything. So many celebrities have had their images sold in some way since their death. Remember when Kurt Cobain's journal went on sale? That's kind of gross. There's just something exceptionally disgusting about the merchandising of Marilyn. Maybe it's because she was so exploited in life, and even though everyone knows of the horrors she went through, she's still being exploited in an even worse and more invasive way. Maybe it's because she specifically requested her personal belongings go to friends and family, and people she trusted held on to it until it could be sold for profit. I don't know. Marilyn was an invention that Norma Jean sold to show her talents, and Marilyn became the only thing that anyone wanted to see. Marilyn became the value of Norma Jean, and Marilyn became the dream that was sold to the world. A dream of a life full of glamour and beauty and decadence. A dream of a life with no pain and no sadness. A dream of a life that no one, not even Marilyn herself, got to lead. Everyone is still selling the myth of Marilyn, promising that if you buy this hair removal cream or this perfume, you too could be like Marilyn Monroe. But not this Marilyn. That Marilyn. The one who doesn't even exist. In Hollywood, a girl's virtue is much less important than her hairdo. You're judged by how you look, not by what you are. Hollywood's a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. I know because I turned down the first offer often enough and held out for the 50 cents.